Daniel woke up in darkness. At first he thought he was still dreaming, but when he opened his eyes the air felt heavy and strange. The ceiling above him glowed faintly with pale blue lights, and the walls curved like he was inside some giant shell. He tried to sit up, but his arms felt weak and a metallic band was locked around his wrist. Connecting him to the strange bed, Daniel's heart pounded. This was not his home, not his world. The last thing he remembered was being on a ship near the border of alien space. There had been bright flashes, alarms, and then nothing. Now, here he was, surrounded by silence and shadow. Slowly the silence broke. Daniel heard whispers, soft, almost trembling. He turned his head and froze. A group of figures stood behind a clear barrier, watching him. They were tall, slender, and strange, yet their faces carried something he recognized. It was not anger, not cruelty. It was desperation. The tallest figure stepped forward. Her skin shimmered faint silver under the blue glow, and her eyes burned like twin suns. She looked at him not as a prisoner, but as if he were some kind of answer. Daniel's throat went dry. "Where am I?" he asked, his voice breaking. The woman did not reply at once. Instead, she looked back at the others and they murmured in their own alien tongue. Then, finally, she spoke in slow, broken English. "You are safe," she said. "You are important." Important. The word made Daniel shiver. He had been a soldier, a pilot, but never important to enemies. What did they want from him? Another alien woman stepped closer to the glass, her eyes wide and filled with tears. She pressed her palm against the barrier, as if begging him. Daniel felt a strange unease in his chest. Why did they look at him like that? Like he was their last hope? A sound echoed through the chamber, doors sliding open, metal grinding against stone. The tall woman entered, her movements strong yet graceful. She stood over him, and though Daniel expected pain or interrogation, she only whispered, "You are the last chance for us." His blood ran cold. The words felt heavier than chains. "What do you mean?" he demanded, struggling against the wrist clamp. The woman's gaze did not waver. "Our people. Dying," she said slowly. "No children. No future, no life." Her words hung in the air like a storm. The others behind the glass nodded, their faces full of sorrow. Daniel's mind raced. No children, no future. Why were they telling him this? What did it have to do with him? The tall woman leaned closer, her voice softer now, almost pleading. "You are human," she said. "You are seed. You are life." Daniel's breath caught. In that moment, he understood what they wanted. Not his knowledge, not his weapons, not his surrender. They wanted him, his very being. They wanted him to save them. Fear twisted in his stomach. He pulled against the band, panic rising. "No," he whispered. "No, this can't be real." But the desperate eyes watching him told him otherwise. Every gaze burned into him with hope and hunger. The chamber grew colder, the silence pressing down. Daniel felt the weight of 1,000 expectations crushing him. He was not a man anymore. To them, he was something else. A key, a tool, a solution. And as the tall alien woman placed her hand gently on his chest, she whispered words that would haunt him forever. "You will save us." Daniel could not believe the words. Save them? Him? It sounded insane. He shook his head, his pulse racing. The tall alien woman kept her hand on his chest, calm but firm. "You do not understand yet," she said softly. "But you will." Two guards entered the room, their armor dark and shaped. Like flowing stone, Daniel tensed, expecting chains or weapons, but instead they released the metallic band on his wrist. He rubbed the sore skin and looked around, his heart hammering. "Why am I here?" he demanded, his voice breaking with anger. The woman did not answer immediately. She motioned to the guards and they led Daniel out of the chamber. The corridor stretched endlessly, glowing with lines of blue light carved into the walls. It felt alive, as though the very structure was breathing. Every step echoed and Daniel's fear grew heavier. Finally, They reached a wide hall. It opened like a cathedral, towering high above. But instead of statues or holy symbols, the walls were covered with hollow cradles. Each cradle was empty, cold, untouched. The sight made Daniel's chest tighten. The woman turned to him, her silver eyes unblinking. "Our children should have filled these," she whispered. "Generations should have played, cried, lived here." She raised her hand toward the empty cradles, her voice trembling. "But for 50 years, not one child." Daniel froze. Not one. In all that time, the weight of her words sank deep. A species without children was a species already dead. He swallowed hard, his anger fading into something else, confusion mixed with dread. "Why tell me this?" Daniel asked, his voice low. The woman stepped, closer, her tone shifting into something colder, more direct. "Because your kind is different," she said. "Our healers searched every system, tested every race, but only humans carry what we need." She paused, her gaze fixed on him. "Your seed can bond with us. No other can." The hall fell silent. Daniel felt the blood drain from his face. He was not here by accident. He was chosen, hunted, taken for this very reason. A chill ran through him, deeper than chains could ever give. Behind the glass walls of the hall, Daniel noticed movement. Dozens of alien women stood watching. Some pressed their hands to the surface, their eyes shining with desperate hope. Some looked away in shame, unable to meet his gaze. It was like standing before a broken nation. Daniel shook his head, backing away. "No," he said sharply, his voice echoing in the hollow chamber. "I'm not. This isn't my fight." He turned, looking for an exit, any way to escape. But everywhere he turned, eyes followed him, filled with sorrow and hunger. The woman's voice cut through the silence, sharp and unyielding. "You cannot run," she said. "You are the last chance. Without you, we vanish." Her words struck, harder than any weapon. She wasn't threatening him, she was pleading with him. A warrior brought down not by battle, but by hopelessness. Daniel felt his stomach twist. He wanted to scream, to deny it. But the truth was carved into every empty cradle. Their future was already fading. And somehow his life was tied to theirs. The woman stepped close, her presence overwhelming. She looked into his eyes, her voice soft now, almost breaking. "We do not ask you to be prisoner," she said. "We ask you to be savior." Daniel's chest tightened. Savior. The word was heavy, crushing, impossible. He was just a man, just a soldier, not a miracle, but in their eyes he was more than that. And as the hall grew quiet again, Daniel realized one terrifying truth. These people were not going to let him go. Not because they hated him, not because they wanted power, but because without him their world would end. Daniel sat alone in a small chamber. The walls glowed with the same blue light, soft but uncomfortably alive. The bed beneath him felt warm, too warm, as if it was watching him. His mind spun in circles, filled with the same words he had heard. "You are seed. You are life." He pressed his hands over his face, breathing hard. This could not be real. He was not chosen, not important, not anyone's savior. He was a soldier, yes, but only because he had nowhere else to go. Now these aliens wanted to make him something else, something he never agreed to. A soft hiss broke the silence. The door slid open, and 2 alien attendants entered. They carried strange tools that glowed with faint light. Daniel's body tensed, his fists clenching. "What are you doing?" he demanded, his voice cracking. The taller attendant tilted her head. Her eyes showed no cruelty, only duty. "We test," she said in broken English. "We measure, we prepare." She gestured for him to lie down, but Daniel shook his head violently, backing against the wall. "I'm not your experiment," he growled. His heart pounded, the air thick with anger and fear. The attendants did not move closer, but their calm eyes made him feel worse, like they were used to this, used to watching hope resist before it bent. Minutes stretched long. Finally, The taller woman lowered her tool and spoke. "You are not slave," she said slowly. "But role must be filled." Her words hit harder than chains. A role, not a choice, not a life, but a role. Daniel sank back onto the bed, his breath ragged. He remembered the empty cradles, the desperate eyes, the words "last chance." Part of him wanted to scream, another part wanted to pity them, but above all he wanted freedom. He wanted his life to be his own, not written by someone else's hands. The door opened again, and Cernea entered. The warrior woman's presence filled the chamber instantly. She dismissed the attendants with a gesture, leaving only the two of them. Daniel glared at her, his voice sharp. "I didn't ask for this," he said. "I didn't ask to be your savior." Cernea stood tall, her silver skin catching the glow. She looked at him not with anger, but with something like sorrow. "You think we want this?" she asked, her voice low and steady. "You think we dreamed to take a stranger to beg for his life to save ours?" Her words shook him. He expected arrogance, commands, cold orders. Instead, her voice cracked at the edges. She was proud, but behind that pride was grief. She too was chained, not by metal, but by the death of her people. Daniel lowered his eyes. For a moment, silence filled the chamber. The hum of the glowing walls was the only sound. Finally, Cernea stepped closer, her voice softer. "You have choice," she said. "But your choice carries all of us." Daniel felt his chest tighten. Choice. She spoke of choice, yet every word felt like a weight pressing on him. If he refused, they would die. If he agreed, he would lose himself. Either way, he was trapped. Cernea reached out, placing something in his hand, a small crystal, glowing faintly like a heartbeat. "This belonged to my sister," she whispered. "She died waiting for hope." Daniel stared at the crystal, its warmth pulsing against his skin. For the first time, he saw not aliens, not enemies, but people, clinging to survival. Still, his anger burned. "I'm not your answer," he muttered, his voice harsh, but deep down a shadow of doubt grew. What if he was? As Cernea left the chamber, her final words lingered in the air. "You may hate the role," she said, "but the role may not hate you." Daniel sat in silence, the crystal glowing in his palm, and though he wanted to throw it away, he could not, because somewhere deep inside he feared the truth. Maybe this unwanted role was already his. The night cycle came, though Daniel could not see stars. The chamber lights dimmed, leaving only the soft glow of the crystal in his hand. He lay on the strange bed staring at it, wondering why he still held it. He could have thrown it away, smashed it, or given it back, but something about the faint pulse inside the crystal felt alive. It reminded him of a heartbeat, fragile and desperate. The door slid open with a hiss. Daniel turned quickly, expecting guards or attendants. Instead, Cernea stepped inside, her armor removed, wearing only simple cloth. Without her warrior's armor, she looked less like a commander and more like a woman carrying too much weight. She did not speak at first. She sat across from him, the dim light casting long shadows across her silver skin. Daniel studied her cautiously, still gripping the crystal. Finally, he broke the silence, his voice sharp. "What do you want now? Another speech about my role?" Cernea shook her head slowly. "No," she said, her voice quiet, almost fragile. "I came to tell you the truth, not as leader, not as warrior, but as sister." Daniel frowned, caught off guard. He had expected commands, not honesty. He leaned forward, the crystal glowing faintly between them. "Then say it," he muttered. "Tell me why me." Cernea lowered her eyes. "My people, we are strong in war but weak in life," she said softly. "My sisters, all of them, died without children, their arms empty, their hearts broken." Her voice trembled, and for the first time, Daniel saw the steel in her break. They begged the stars for an answer, and the stars gave us nothing. Daniel's chest tightened. He imagined a people watching themselves vanish slowly, not through battle, but silence. No cries of newborns, no future to hold, a whole civilization waiting for extinction. It was not the death of warriors, but the slow death of mothers. Cernea raised her head again, her eyes wet with unshed tears. When we found your kind, we thought it was lie, she continued. But the tests showed truth. Only humans could give us hope. Her voice cracked, raw, and unguarded. You are not prisoner, Daniel. You are answer to our prayers, even if you do not wish it. Daniel clenched his fists. Her words cut deep, sharper than chains. She was not speaking as leader now. She was speaking as a woman who had lost everything. He looked at the crystal his hand realizing why she had given it to him. It was not a gift of power. It was a memory of grief. For a long time, silence filled the chamber. Daniel's mind spun, torn between anger and pity. Finally, he asked quietly, "And what about you? What have you lost?" Cernea stiffened, her hands trembling slightly. "My sister was younger than me," she said, her voice breaking. "She dreamed of children, of a family, of carrying life." Her gaze dropped, her shoulders heavy. "But she died with empty arms, and I could not save her." Daniel felt his breath catch. She looked less like a commander now and more like someone crushed by the same role she was placing on him. Her confession was not about orders, not about duty. It was about guilt. She carried the weight of her people's failure on her own shoulders. Slowly, Daniel placed the glowing crystal on the bed between them. His voice was rough but calmer now. "You keep calling me savior," he said. "But maybe what you really want is someone to blame if it fails." Cernea met his gaze, hurt flashing in her eyes. "Maybe," she whispered, "but I would rather hope and fail than die with nothing." The words hung in the air like a knife. Daniel had no answer, only silence. Cernea stood, straightening herself, the warrior mask slowly sliding back over her grief. At the door she turned, her voice soft but firm. "Tomorrow the council will ask you for your choice," she said. Her eyes lingered on him one last time. "Remember, Daniel, my people are not asking for a soldier. We are asking for life." The door closed, leaving Daniel alone in the dim chamber. He stared at the crystal, his heart heavy. For the first time, he felt the weight not just of duty, but of sorrow. And he wondered if refusing them would be mercy or cruelty. Daniel could not sleep. Cernea's confession kept echoing inside his head. Her words about her sisters, her people, and their dying future weighed on him. But something inside still screamed that he was nothing more than a tool to them. Not a man, not free, just the seed. The chamber lights dimmed further, signaling deep night. Daniel lay still, pretending to rest, but his ears stayed sharp. And then, he heard it. A faint scrape against the door, slow and careful. Not the sound of guards, not the heavy step of Cernea. This was different, secret. Daniel sat up quietly. The door hissed open just slightly, a thin shadow slipping through. 2 figures entered, their movements quiet, almost silent. They were smaller than Cernea, wrapped in dark cloth, faces hidden, but Daniel could feel the sharp intent in the way they moved. The first one raised a hand, signaling the other to watch the hall. The second crept closer, eyes gleaming faint yellow in the dark. Daniel's instincts screamed at him. This was no rescue. This was something else. Human. The first whispered, the voice harsh and cold. "You do not belong to her, you belong to us." Daniel's stomach twisted. They were not here to free him. They were here to take him. He pushed back against the bed frame, glaring. "I'm not going anywhere," he hissed, his fists clenched. The cloaked figure tilted her head. "You think you have choice?" she said, bitterness dripping from her tone. "Cernea lies to you. Her council lies to you. They will use you until you are empty." She stepped closer, her hand brushing over the glowing crystal on the bed. "But we will make sure your strength is not wasted." Daniel felt cold crawl up his spine. These women were desperate, yes, but in their eyes he saw something darker. Not sorrow, not hope, only hunger. They didn't see him as savior. They saw him as property. Before he could move, the second figure reached for him. Daniel reacted without thinking, slamming his shoulder into her. She stumbled back, surprised but not defeated. The first hissed in anger and drew a small blade, its edge glowing with green fire. "Come quietly," she warned, "or you bleed before you breed." The threat chilled Daniel to the bone. This was no plea for survival. This was theft, power, control. And suddenly he understood. Not all the aliens agreed with Cernea. Not all of them wanted him treated with care. Some wanted him like scavengers fighting over scraps. The blade moved closer, light dancing against the wall. Daniel's heart thundered. He grabbed the bed's metal frame, ripping the loose panel free. When the first figure lunged, he swung with all his strength. The crash echoed, sparks flying as metal hit blade. The struggle was short but violent. Daniel was strong, but outnumbered. The second woman clawed at him, her sharp nails cutting into his arm. He fought wildly, the fear fueling him. But he knew he couldn't hold out long. And then, suddenly, the door burst open. Cernea stormed in, her eyes blazing, her blade drawn. The intruders froze, fear flashing across their faces. One of them spat on the ground, shouting in their alien tongue, "You betray your own people for this human." Cernea's voice thundered, filled with fury. "You shame us all with your greed," she roared. With a single motion, her weapon struck, sparks flashing. The rebels stumbled back, retreating into the shadows, vanishing through the hall. Silence followed, heavy and suffocating. Daniel stood shaking, blood dripping from his arm. Cernea turned to him, her face hard but her eyes softer. "They will try again," she said grimly. "Not all want you safe. Some want you broken." Daniel sank back onto the bed, his body trembling. He realized the truth. He was not just a savior or a prisoner. He was a prize, a treasure fought over in the dark, and the war for him had already begun. Daniel's arm burned from the scratches. Blood dripped slowly down his skin. Dark against the pale light of the chamber, he pressed his hand against the wound, but his mind was not on the pain. His thoughts spun around the attack, around the shadows that had tried to take him. The rebels had not come to free him. They had come to claim him. Cernea stood near the door, her blade still glowing faint silver. Her chest rose and fell as if she had been running. She had fought her own kind to protect him. Daniel could hardly believe it. A warrior leader choosing him over her own people. "Why?" he asked, his voice sharp. "Why save me? If I'm just breeding stock, why risk your life for me?" Cernea's eyes locked on him, steady and unflinching. "You are not stock," she said, her voice heavy with conviction. "You are man, and you are hope, not tool." Daniel wanted to argue, but her words caught him off guard. She didn't look at him the way the rebels had, with hunger and greed. She looked at him like someone who had already chosen her path, a path that put her against her own people, and for a moment Daniel felt something unexpected. Trust. Cernea approached and crouched in front of him. She took a cloth from her belt and wrapped it around his arm. Her touch was firm but gentle, practiced from years of war. Daniel flinched at first, then let her continue. The silence between them carried more meaning than words. When she finished, she rose to her full height. Her silver eyes burned brighter in the dim light. "They will not stop," she said quietly. "The rebels believe the council is weak. They want control of you, control of future." Her tone hardened, sharp as steel. "They will try again and again, until you are theirs, or dead." Daniel's stomach twisted. He had been hunted before on battlefields by enemies with guns and fire. But this was different. This was a war fought in shadows, a war where he was the prize, not the fighter. He pushed himself to his feet, facing her with clenched fists. "I won't be their slave," he said harshly. "If they want me, they'll have to kill me first." Cernea's lips curved into the faintest smile, not of joy but of respect. "Good," she said. "Then we fight together." The word together hung in the air. Daniel blinked, surprised by it. No one had said that to him since his old squad. It felt strange, comforting, even though she was still alien to him. That night, Cernea did not leave. She sat near the door, her blade across her lap. Daniel lay on the bed, pretending to sleep, but his eyes often drifted to her. She was a wall of steel between him and the darkness outside. Hours passed before another sound broke the silence. Footsteps echoed faintly in the hall, slow and deliberate. Cernea's hand gripped her blade, her body tense. The door shuddered as if something pressed against it. Daniel sat up, heart hammering. The sound stopped. Silence stretched. Then a soft whisper came from beyond the door. "You cannot keep him, warrior," the voice hissed. "He belongs to all, not to you." Cernea rose, blade ready, her voice a growl. "He belongs to no one," she snapped. The hall fell quiet again, but the message was clear. The rebels were watching, waiting, planning. Daniel's chest tightened as he realized the truth. His life was no longer his own. Every breath, every step, every choice would be fought over. And though Cernea stood at his side, the war was only beginning. As the dim lights shifted toward dawn, Cernea turned to him. Her face was calm, but her voice carried the weight of battle. "Today the council will demand your answer," she said. "But before you choose, know this, Daniel. There are those who would die to protect you." Daniel stared at her, his arm aching, his mind torn. She had fought for him, bled for him, even defied her own kind for him. And now she was asking him to trust her. The choice ahead felt impossible. But deep inside, Daniel knew one thing. The first attempt on his life was only the beginning. The chamber doors opened at dawn. Guards in dark armor stepped inside, their movements sharp and disciplined. They spoke no words, only motioned for Daniel to follow. Cernea walked beside him, her expression hard, her blade strapped to her back. Daniel's chest tightened. He knew what this meant. The council was waiting. They led him through endless halls carved from stone that shimmered faint blue. Every wall carried the same haunting pattern, like veins glowing beneath skin. Daniel felt as if the whole place was alive, breathing with quiet judgment. The guards finally stopped at a towering gate, carved with alien runes that pulsed with faint light. The doors opened, and Daniel stepped into the council chamber. It was vast, like the inside of a cathedral. 7 alien figures sat on high seats, their eyes fixed on him. They were older than Cernea, their silver skin dulled with age, their presence heavy. The air itself seemed to bend around them. Daniel swallowed, forcing himself not to look away. "Human." The eldest spoke, his voice deep and echoing. "You know why you are here." Daniel stood stiff, his fists tight at his side. "I know enough," he said. "I know what you want from me." The chamber went silent. The elder's eyes narrowed slightly. "Our people have no future," he said. "No children, no hope, only silence ahead." He leaned forward, his gaze piercing. "You can change that. You can give us life again." Daniel felt every word like a weight on his chest. He wanted to shout, to say he wasn't theirs to use, but then he saw the sorrow in their faces, the hollow eyes of leaders who had already buried too many hopes. They were not monsters. They were desperate. Another council member, a woman with sharp features, spoke next. "You must choose," she said, her voice cold but steady. "Will you give yourself to us, or will you refuse and let us fade into nothing?" Daniel's breath caught. The words echoed inside his skull. Give himself, or let them die. There was no easy answer, no middle path. It was a choice designed to crush him. Cernea stepped forward, her voice firm. "He has the right to speak freely," she said, her silver eyes flashing. "He is not cattle to be herded." The council murmured, displeased at her defense. But she stood strong, unshaken. Daniel looked between them, his heart racing. Part of him wanted to scream no, to walk away, to demand freedom. But another part remembered the empty cradles, the crystal in his hand, Cernea's tears for her sister. They were dying, truly dying, and he alone stood between their extinction and survival. He clenched his fists, his voice hoarse. "You want me to save you," he said. "But if I say, yes, what happens to me?" Do I lose myself? Am I just a body to you? The council fell silent, their expressions unreadable. But one elder finally answered, You will be remembered as savior, even if you do not live as one. The words cut deep. Savior, yet prisoner. Hero, yet tool. Daniel's chest ached with the weight of it. His mind screamed that it wasn't fair, but fairness meant nothing here, not when an entire race's survival hung in the balance. Cernea stepped closer, her voice low but steady. Whatever choice you make, I will stand with you, she whispered. Her eyes met his, and for the first time, Daniel felt she wasn't asking as leader, but as a woman who believed in him. Her loyalty was not a command, it was a promise. Daniel looked up at the council, his voice trembling. I don't know if I can do this, he admitted, but I know one thing. You will not own me, not now, not ever. Gasps echoed through the chamber. The council shifted, their expressions mixed with shock and anger. The eldest leaned forward, his tone sharp. Then speak your choice, human. Daniel's throat tightened, sweat dripping down his back. This was no longer a demand. It was a verdict. One word could decide the fate of an entire people. And in that moment, Daniel realized the truth. No matter what he chose, part of him would be lost forever. The council chamber trembled with silence. Daniel stood in the center, his body tense, his throat dry. Every eye was on him, waiting, judging, demanding, the weight of their entire species. Pressed down like a mountain, but deep inside something stirred, something stubborn, something human. He clenched his fists and took a step forward. I am not a tool, he said, his voice rough but strong. You call me savior, yet you treat me like a prisoner. His words echoed through the chamber, bouncing against the tall stone walls. Some council members frowned, others leaned forward with sharp interest. The eldest narrowed his eyes. You misunderstand. He said, We honor you as the key to our survival. Daniel shook his head, anger flashing. No, you honor what I can give, not who I am. His heart pounded, but his voice grew stronger. If I help you, it will be on my terms, not yours. Gasps rippled through the chamber. Cernea's lips twitched in the faintest smile, pride glowing. In her eyes, the sharp-featured councilwoman hissed, her tone cutting. You dare make demands? You are one against millions. Daniel turned to her, his jaw tight. Then maybe millions should remember one thing. Humans don't bow. The words struck like a blade. The council erupted in murmurs, voices overlapping, anger rising. But Daniel did not step back. He stood tall, his chest heaving. This was the spirit that had carried humanity through wars, through loss, through endless stars. The spirit that refused to be broken. Finally, the eldest raised his hand, silencing the chamber. His eyes locked, on Daniel, searching him, weighing him. You speak of freedom, the elder said slowly. Then tell us, what is your demand? Daniel breathed deeply, his heart hammering. He thought of the rebels, of Cernea's confession, of the crystal glowing in his palm. He thought of the empty cradles and the desperate eyes watching him. Then he lifted his chin and spoke. If I help, I will not be caged, I will not be forced, I will be treated as equal, not as cattle. The words hung heavy. For a moment, the council sat frozen, their expressions unreadable. Then the sharp-featured woman laughed coldly. Equal? You are human, a weaker race. What power do you think you hold? Daniel's eyes burned as he stepped closer. The power to say no, he said firmly. The power to let you die if you treat me like nothing. The chamber fell into stunned silence. The human's defiance was like a fire in the cold air. Cernea placed her hand on her blade, ready if the council turned violent, but Daniel's words seemed to crack something deeper. They had never been challenged like this. Not by one man, not by prey who dared call himself free. The eldest leaned back slowly, his lips pressed tight, his eyes narrowed, but there was something else, respect. You are bold, he said, perhaps too bold. Daniel stood unshaken, his voice steady. Boldness is human, and if you want my help, you must accept it. Cernea stepped forward now, her voice strong. He is right, she said. If you break him, you break the only chance we have. Her words cut through the chamber like steel. The murmurs rose again, some agreeing, some furious, but the seed of truth had been planted. The eldest raised his hand once more, silencing the storm. "Very well," he said, his tone heavy. "We will give you this chance, human." Daniel's chest rose and fell, his heart pounding with both fear and triumph. He had not won their trust, not yet, but he had forced them to listen. And that was the first victory. As the guards escorted him back to his chamber, Cernea walked beside him. "You showed them, Spirit," she said quietly, almost with pride. Daniel gave a tired smirk, his voice low. "It's all we humans have sometimes." Cernea's eyes softened. "Sometimes spirit is enough." Back in his chamber, Daniel sat on the bed, exhausted. The path ahead was still uncertain, the rebels still lurking, the council still divided. But for the first time since waking in this alien place, he felt something different. He felt like he had taken back a piece of himself. The human spirit refused to bow. The council did not let Daniel rest long. The very next day, guards arrived at his chamber, their armor glowing faintly under the blue lights. Cernea walked with them, her face calm but her eyes sharp. "The council has chosen a test," she told him, her voice steady. "They want proof of your worth before they grant you equality." Daniel's chest tightened. "A test?" he asked bitterly. "Haven't I already proved enough by surviving your rebels?" Cernea shook her head slowly. "To them, survival is not enough. They need to see you stand before the old machines, before the judgment of our ancestors." The words sent a shiver through Daniel. Old machines, ancestors, judgment. None of it sounded safe. Still, he walked with her, past long corridors that hummed like veins of light. Finally, they reached a massive door carved with alien runes, pulsing faintly. The guards pressed their hands against the surface, and the stone split open, revealing a chamber filled with ancient glow. Inside stood towering machines, their shapes strange and jagged, half stone, half metal. The air buzzed with static, the scent of something old and alive. Daniel stepped inside, his heart pounding. The machines lit up, scanning him with beams of pale light. Symbols flickered across the walls, unreadable but powerful. The council watched from high seats carved into the walls. One of the elders spoke, his voice deep and commanding. "This is the trial of trust," he declared. "If you are to stand with us as equal, the machines must see your spirit, not just your seed." Daniel swallowed hard. "What does that mean?" he asked quietly. Cernea's voice came soft at his side. "It means you must face what they show you, and not break." Before he could answer, the floor beneath him shifted. The lights grew brighter, wrapping around him like fire. Daniel blinked, and suddenly he was no longer in the chamber. He stood in a field of ash. The ground cracked and broken. The sound of cries echoed all around. He turned sharply, and his heart froze. He saw humans, men from his squad, faces he knew, faces he had lost. They reached for him, their voices raw with blame. "You left us, Daniel," one shouted. "You survived while we burned." Daniel's chest ached, sweat dripping down his face. "This isn't real," he whispered, his voice shaking. But the pain in their eyes, the fire on their skin, felt too real. He dropped to his knees, clutching his head, the guilt from years ago ripping open again. Then another vision rose before him, Cernea's face, her eyes hollow, her body broken. She whispered weakly, "You chose yourself, and we died." Daniel staggered back, the words stabbing into him. He was trapped between two worlds, human and alien, both demanding everything. "Enough!" he roared, his voice breaking the illusion. He clenched his fists, forcing himself to his feet. "I am not perfect, I am not savior, but I will not bow to guilt, not human guilt, not alien guilt." His words thundered in the ash-filled air. Slowly the vision shattered, the fire fading, the cries vanishing. Daniel blinked and found himself back in the chamber. The machines dimmed, their lights pulsing slowly as if satisfied. The council whispered among themselves, their tones mixed with surprise. The eldest leaned forward, his eyes narrowed but thoughtful. "You did not break," he said. "You stood against the shadows of your past." Cernia's lips curved into a faint smile, pride glowing in her gaze. Daniel's body shook with exhaustion, but his spirit burned strong. He had faced the trial, faced the weight of guilt and despair, and for once he felt more than prisoner, more than tool. He felt human, unbroken. As he staggered back toward his chamber, Cernia walked beside him. "You showed them strength they did not expect," she said softly. Daniel smirked weakly, his voice rough. "Strength? More like stubbornness." Cernia's eyes warmed. "Sometimes that is the same thing."